Welcome back, grade 11 students. Hope you enjoyed your break, and I hope that you're ready to dive into something a little bit different in our coding. In this final unit of our course, we're going to be tackling something I'm going to title application programming. In this, we're not going to get to the point where we create full apps. That'll be saved for the course next year if you're interested in taking that. But we will start to develop some of our skills in working in more of a general purpose compiler program, Netbeans. And we're going to be working with accessing some of the more general purpose common Java libraries. Greenfoot is a great program, but it's quite specialized and limited, meant for game and minor app development, meant for kind of beginners learning things and simplifying the scope of what we're working with so that people can approach it a little more easily and that there's not too many things to be concerned about. But we want to dip our toe into the big wide world of Java code itself and get a glimpse at what's possible out there. And we're going to be doing a bunch of text-based processing in different forms to learn a few new coding skills and just test out some of the different ways that we can program as computer science students. Make sure you have Netbeans open as you follow this tutorial. Pause it and get it open up if you don't have it already. And we'll take a look around the windows here and see what we got going on. You may or may not see this projects tab on the side. You'll see I have a lot of projects that I've worked on in the recent past. You might have something showing up there that someone else made in the course, or maybe you made something earlier and you left that up there. If you're not seeing the projects tab, then you can go under Window and Projects, or Control 1 will pop that up for you. What we're going to be doing is creating a new project. Oops. Once we're in New Project, don't get too intimidated by this, but there's a lot of options, a lot of categories. JavaFX, Maven, NetBeans module samples. I don't have anything installed on my computer right now under that folder, but under Java is what we're going to be primarily working in, Java application. You actually don't have to mess with anything normally. It automatically selects this when you start it up. And what it's going to hit next, we want to create a Java application. And then we got some information to fill in, a project name. I'm just going to call this Lesson 1. And your project location. I'm storing this on my USB under the appropriate folder. Make sure that you store yours where you want to access your files while we're working in NetBeans here. So make sure you choose a folder that makes sense to you, whether that's your USB or your student drive. Don't worry, this is just going to show you the project folder name that it creates automatically. And don't worry about selecting this, leave it blank. There will be times in the future where you'll turn this create main class off, but for now, we are going to have it as lesson 1. Maybe you want to create your main class in some different way. I'm actually going to pop open Greenfoot for a sec. Let's see what I have open here. What was the most recent thing I peeked at? A space game. Cool. So we learned about classes in Greenfoot. Each one of these different boxes is a class, a set of instructions. In NetBeans, when we look at a project, well, I can't click on it right now. We'll look at it, actually I'll finish creating this. It's going to create the project. And we'll see in lesson 1 that it creates this file called lesson1.java. And in it, I have a class called lesson1. One of the big differences between Greenfoot and NetBeans is that in each different box in Greenfoot, I have one class. But in one file in NetBeans, I could actually have many classes. I could down here create a bunch more classes in the space below. Or I can create new Java classes separately, kind of like different files in a folder or different boxes in Greenfoot. But for the most part, we're going to be working in one class for now. So I have this class. I can minimize things on the side here and pop it back open again. You'll see on the side boxes, our source packages are the information that we're creating or maybe importing for our projects. And you should be seeing wherever you put your code in, lesson, or whatever name you give it, .java. We're creating a Java file. We also have this folder called libraries. And if you want to peek at it, it can be a little bit intimidating. We see all the different libraries that we're accessing. What we're going to be finding in this section is that there's a lot more information available to us than there was in Greenfoot. A quick Google search of, let's just see where our main core libraries are. Java core libraries. We have many different options for libraries within Java that allow us to do lots of different things. this overview does not actually give away a lot of what's really going on behind the scenes. Let's just look here, Java API, pull up our Oracle Docs API, and we'll get a sense. Now, remember in our Greenfoot API, we had our classes listed. And maybe you're thinking, Mr. L, there's a lot of stuff that we covered in Greenfoot, which is true, especially being beginners, but really in the scope of what we can do in coding, there is quite a limited world. So let's take a look just at our actor class. Within it, we have description of the class, our constructor options, and actor we only have one option, unless we create our own custom one. Then we have a list of methods, and it looks like there's quite a lot here, maybe 15 or so at a glance. And another class color has some different fields that exist, the different colors that exist in the program, a couple constructors, and some methods, the descriptions, all the things down below. So we know the layout of the API, and the regular Java API layout is going to be really familiar in that sense, although there's a lot more information. If we look at all the packages that are possible to reference, each package containing many, many libraries, and here's all of the classes like this that we have available to us in Java. I mean, you'll see that it becomes pretty intimidating and overwhelming really fast. One of the things that we have to understand as a computer programming student is that no one is expected to know what all of these things do. I have not touched the huge majority of them in my work as a coder, and most people will not have touched the huge majority of these different classes, because a lot of them, most of them, have very particular purposes. And one of the jobs of a coder is to go, I have some functionality I want to implement. I have an image I want to create that does something a certain way. Maybe it draws a shape, or maybe I change a font. How do I do that? And so I can do a Google search for a forum, or I can look through my options and do some research to find out what will help me accomplish that task. Research and figuring out what functionality to implement is a huge job that coders have to do. And I'll be asking you to do that in a very limited way in this unit, but that doesn't mean that you can't go off and explore something on your own. Maybe you want to, I don't know, just try and do something where you scroll down and go, let's try clicking on something here. Can I implement this international formatter somehow in my program? And you go, okay, I'm going to read through the description of all the things that this can do. And maybe I spot, oh, I can do something that allows me to, well, let's see here, actually format text in different ways. Interesting. Okay, so I have a couple constructors, looks familiar, and I have the methods. Not too many methods. If I want to know what does getMaximum mean, it returns the maximum permissible value. Maybe that doesn't make tons of sense to us, so I click on getMaximum and returns the maximum legal value that can be input in this space. Okay, so there's a description of our methods just like in Greenfoot. So it's possible, actually, as our understanding grows, that you could dive into some random class and maybe borrow some of its functionality. So we're going to learn in a sec how we can access each of these classes. Simple way, we got to import the actual reference to it so that Java knows that we want that information, and then we can access all of that functionality. I'm going to be telling you some of the classes that we're going to be referring to because a lot of these things, I chose a random one here, not going to be at all relevant to what we're doing in this section here. But you have enough understanding now that you could potentially click on something. An output stream would be a good one that you might actually, you will be learning if you take my grade 12 course. And what does an output stream do? Well, it allows us to accept output bytes and send them to some sink. Some terms we might not know yet, but basically it allows us to send information somewhere else, like writing to another file. Constructor, it's got some methods. I can write information. Interesting, I can close, I can flush, removing information from it. And maybe you can figure some things out on your own how to implement some of this stuff. Not required, but I just wanted to poke around at this a little bit to show you that our understanding is at the point where you can begin to work more so like a computer programmer, finding classes that provide solutions to various problems, learning them yourself, and then using their functionality to implement solutions. A huge thing to keep in mind as a coder is that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. There might be times where it helps you out, where it might be easier if you know, oh, I can actually make my code do that. It'll just take me 20 minutes. That might be less time than it takes to find a class, learn it, and implement it. But there might be many times where finding a class that already works will be the right choice for you. So there's our API here. We'll be referring to specific ones later on. So our libraries are all the functionality that kind of comes baseline with Java that needs to be present there. We're not going to poke around with this. Definitely don't delete this or remove it. Notice it doesn't let you here, but if you manage to somehow, you'll have big problems. So we have our main project file here, and you'll note that there's some comments put in. Something that I like to do, just to make my code look a little cleaner, is take away these comments. You know, this is a little minus sign. I'll just zoom in a little bit more here. That I can collapse down these lines. I like to just remove them. About licensing, about authorship. I don't need to have my name authored here. And this just says that here is my main arguments. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to remove these comments. I'll keep this one in here for now, the to-do code application logic here. So this is what you should see each time you create a new project. You'll see the package name. A package is kind of like a folder on your computer. If I pull over, let's see here, a folder on my computer, when I record our class videos, it's something called OBS videos. I record them for my different classes in here. I have this folder that contains my grade 11 videos, my grade 12 videos, and my currently recording videos. I better not mess with this. That's what it's recording right now. And I have all these various things separated in one main folder structure. Your package is this package icon here, can contain many different files that will all want to be kind of connected in some way later on. But I have to refer to which package this class is in. That's what's up here. Then the name of the class that I'm working in. All of our code has to exist in a class of some kind. And then within our class, there's very limited information we start with. That's public, static, void, main, string. What does this mean? An array of strings called args. We'll talk about what this means right now, actually. This is, let's make a little comment here. This is the place where your program begins to run. You could have lots of other methods and information down below it, but inside of this public main, the program will begin here, and this is kind of its main application logic section. What does it mean? Well, the public says it can be accessed externally, necessary. The programs in the background that are running Netbeans need to have access. Static means it can be accessed from anywhere without having to create an actual object. It's important, but if it didn't make sense, that's all right. Void, meaning it doesn't return anything, it's just accepting information. We don't want this code talking to what's running Java. We want it to just be working within itself. Main is its name. Technically, you could rename this, but I don't recommend it. Java is going to be looking for this in different times. We keep this name main because it refers to it elsewhere. And then inside of it, we have an array of strings that we call args. However, keep in mind that the name we give things can change. You could, if you want, name this A, or you could name this Bob, or you could name this something. Doesn't matter. That's just the name. If you were to refer to it later, I would go something inside my code, and then I'll do something with the something. We actually aren't going to be doing anything with these main args, but it does need to exist here because sometimes Java will expect to pass in information. This will always be created in your Netbeans project, and it cannot be removed. You need to have it there for this main to work. So then we have the body of this. Think of it kind of like a constructor. It's the first thing that runs in your program. And we need some logic in here to do something. Okay, let's have our program tell us something. So here's another new piece of information that you're going to be using a lot. I'm going to type it in system.out.print. My dot didn't work. And inside of it, I can print out a message. As coders like to do, I'll print out hello world. What this is telling it, Java, is I want my system to output printing some string information. This system.out.print we'll be using a lot. Now we have a second one we can use called println, print line. This means that it prints it on a brand new line. We'll see the difference here in a sec. I'll just do print for now. And I'm going to go up to the top on my toolbar here, and this arrow, run project. I can either click it or I can press F6, and it's going to build my program, and my output and my program here popped up and covered my whole screen. So we'll see about window moving. I can put the output to the side. I prefer to have my output down on the bottom here, so I can see my code and the output side by side. And you'll see my program output hello world, the thing that I told it to. So let's just see, the print will print things side by side. So if I do a few of these and I hit run, notice that hello worlds all end up side by side on my output. However, if I was to go print line, in each of these, and run my program, note that each hello world is on a new line. So I can print messages to the console, to the output section of different things. How about if I print out information about a variable? So how do I define a variable? Well, the same way we did it in Greenfoot. I'm going to define, let's say, an int. Maybe I'll call this my num. My favorite number, my favorite hockey player, 66. My num, why don't I call this my fav num? And something I can do here is, rather than print out a string, I'm just going to print out my fav num. I'm going to print out my favorite number. See what happens? I press F6, run my program, 66 is printed out. I can also conjoin information together. We actually have a fancy term for this called concatenation. If you want to see how that's spelled, I'm going to do this right now. Concatenation. I'm going to say my favorite number is a string, and at the end of it, I'm going to append or concatenate my favorite number. So think about what this might do. It's going to print out to the system a string, my favorite number is, with a space, so that there's a space before my favorite num, and then it's going to add to the end of that my actual favorite number. Okay, what if I wanted to add a period to the end of the sentence? I'm going to add a new string that's just the period. My favorite number is 66. So what I have going on in this simple program is defining a variable, and then I'm outputting a string and the variable, multiple strings together with the variable in this case, so I can see this printed out to the console. What you should be doing after following through with this lesson is just making sure that you can type in the same code, play around, see if you can define a string. My name equals Mr. Rao. Almost typed my actual name, that would have been really unprofessional of me. Mr. Rao. And I can print out my name here. My favorite number is Mr. Rao. Okay, well, we'll fix that later. Play around with some different variable types, play around with printing out different forms of information, and in the next lesson, we'll add in some more complexity to what it is that we're working on in this section.